Python's default tool for setting up and managing requirements for projects is pip. But there's a lot of modern Python project management pip doesn't handle, at least not yet. And so third-party tools have stepped in to fill the gap. Two of the biggest of those tools are UV and Poetry. UV is the newer contender. It's part of the wave of new Python tooling written in Rust. Poetry has been around for a while, and it's been adopted as a development tool for a few high-profile projects. Let's see how the two of them shape up side by side. To show a little of what it's like to manage a project with both of these tools, I'm going to take a project I've shown a few times before, my Conway's Game of Life project. Let's start with UV, the new kid on the block. When I initialize a new project with UV, it'll create a pyproject.toml file and let me add dependencies with UV add. I've already set up this project's base, but let's say I want to use Cython and Piglet as dependencies. So I type UV add Cython and Piglet. And this will add those dependencies to pyproject.toml and install them in a virtual environment, and also figure out what the optimal versions are for each dependency. This is what UV and Poetry are most important for. They help you figure out the dependencies you have for your project, whether or not they're compatible with each other, and if not, what to do about it. UV works as a pretty transparent overlay to the existing way of doing things with a Python project. If you want to work with pip, for instance, you just use UV as a prefix, UV pip list. And this is a list of all the packages that are installed in the virtual environment tracked for this project. UV also respects other behaviors. For instance, when we set up this project, it was installed into the local venv as an editable install, which means its build process was triggered. And that built the compiled Cython components for it, and also set up the project's command line entry points, all of which are now available in the venv. So UV is best thought of as an accelerant and a refinement to the existing Python ways of doing things. It's not an outward dependency. Other people don't have to use UV to develop my project or to run it. Now let's take a look at how Poetry does things. The first and biggest difference with Poetry is that it takes a much more proactive role in managing your project. As with UV, you can use Poetry commands to set up a project and add dependencies to it. The pyproject.toml file I have here I created by running poetry init and supplying my dependencies. So if I use poetry add to include a new dependency, in this case markdown, that will get its dependencies resolved and added to the pyproject file. But you'll notice we have no venv directory in this project. And that's because Poetry manages venvs separately, on its own, apart from any individual project you'd create. If we look at the virtual environments that we can use here, you'll notice the Poetry created venv is listed, but that it's often a user profile directory. It's not in the project directory itself. A number of other behaviors also change. For instance, if I make an editable install of my project through Poetry, as I've done here, the conventional build process for extension modules or entry points doesn't run. If I want to do all that, I have to add custom entries to the build system section of pyproject. And I also have to create a build script specifically for Poetry, which in this case just invokes the existing setup.py as it would usually be run. In fact, the whole way Poetry handles build processes is still considered an unstable feature. So Poetry tends to take over a lot of the individual aspects of how a project is not only managed, but built. And those changes, once they're put in place, are going to mean an ongoing dependency on the way Poetry does things. To that end, if you're working in a team and you want to enforce consistency on the way a project is developed from the inside, including the exact tooling for setup and package management, Poetry is the better choice. But if you just want a tool that lets you work as you do now with Python, but faster, with a nicer set of options for spinning up and managing projects, choose UV. And that's it for this episode. If you liked it, leave a comment below, and don't forget to follow Dev with Serdar and InfoWorld on Facebook, YouTube, and InfoWorld.com.